Hey everybody, Mrs. Fagle-Fedele here. I'm going to go ahead and have you listen to Breathing Underwater by Alex Flynn.
Much later that day, after I and the journal have dried off. I look at my journal, hoping Judge Lehman doesn't require neatness. It's trashed, wavy and bumpy and smudged, like it's been through a shipwreck. Yet I've dried it off with a hairdryer so I can write in it. Thinking of the car makes me think about Tom. The day of Zach's party, I spent most of the afternoon waxing my car. Tom even helped. Buffing worked his triceps or something, and we were getting tan too. He'd given up on Ashley, and me, possibly realizing before I did that I was in love with Caitlin. Sometimes Tom knew me better than I knew myself, and sometimes he didn't. "Man, you're so lucky to get this car," Tom said. He was always saying stuff like that, and I never corrected him. I just sprayed Armor All and shrugged. Tom went on about what a perfect make-out machine it was. I hoped so. I'd sort of been obsessing about kissing Caitlin that night. Don't get me wrong, I was hardly sweet 16 and never been kissed. I'd probably swapped spit with a dozen girls if you counted Spin the Bottle and a botched attempt to cop a feel off Peyton Boronsky playing 7 Minutes in Heaven in 8th grade. In 9th grade, everyone was pairing off, at least for the evening, and I'd spent many sticky nights playing tonsil hockey on someone's parents' unsupervised sofa. So I'd touched, kissed, and groped, and been touched, kissed, and groped, all meaningless so far. I had a feeling Caitlin's would be the kiss that mattered. That night we had dinner in the Carters' dining room. Tom's family always ate there on weekends. I'd been joining them since grade school. The first time, I'd stood gaping at the china, silver, and flowers, and Tom and his brother wet-combed and shining. It was the kind of spread my father had for clients, not for me. They even dressed for dinner, although Tom and I just wore khakis. Conversation was quiet, smooth as peanut butter. Like every time, Tom's old cocker spaniel, Wimpy, played around my feet. Feeding him table scraps was firmly against the rules, but for some reason it was important to me to be Wimpy's favorite. I used to pretend he was my dog, too. I listened to Mrs. C describe the antics of little Win, Tom's brother's baby, as I slipped Wimpy a huge bite of steak. I got nailed. "Nicky, that's why that dog begs," Mrs. Carter said. I knew she was thinking about Labor Day when Wimpy had put his whole face in the potato salad. "And that's why he always wants to sleep on your bed when you stay over," Tom added. That always bugged Tom. I apologized, but when they glanced away, I accidentally dropped another piece. Over dinner, Tom's dad tried to talk us into working after school at his office. Tom rolled his eyes. We went through this every month, Mr. Carter trying to encourage Tom's interest in the family firm, and Tom avoiding the subject. Finally, Tom's mother rescued him, saying she was sure Tom had the rest of his life to work at a law office. "Perhaps over the summer," Tom's father said. Tom pretended not to hear. "Did I mention the Iceman has a date?" he said between forkfuls of potatoes. Tom was on a carbohydrate kick that week, although the week before it had been proteins. Mrs. Carter turned to me, glad to change the subject. "Is it anyone special?" "I don't know yet. It's our first date." I was lying. Tom mentioned she'd had lunch with us 3 times during the week, and his mom chuckled. "And what about you, Thompson? Who's your date?" "I don't have one," Tom answered before I could say anything. I caught the look on Tom's face. Though I didn't know why, I changed the subject. "Did Trey send over any more pictures of little Win?" I could always charm his mom. Of course there were more pictures, so I told her we'd clear the table while she went and got them. I rose and picked up my plate. Tom followed me into the kitchen. When we were out of earshot, I asked why he hadn't told his parents about Liana. "They wouldn't like it. Mom would hear a Cuban name and freak." Tom picked a leftover roll from the basket and downed it in 2 buckets. January 21. Key Biscayne High. Between Mario's class and writing in...
Okay, I'm going to pick it up from here. I'm not sure why the audio stopped. Rafts, he meant, like in the newspaper. Bolseros, who swam from Cuba with nothing but the clothes on their backs and rafts made of driftwood and garbage. But what did that have to do with tall, beautiful Liana? And her Tommy Hilfiger Is that how you say that? Wardrobe. They wouldn't think that. I said, your parents are cool, and Leanna's no boat person. She doesn't even have an accent. She grew up here. She was born here. It won't matter. Either her family's in the country club or they're not. And if they aren't, they're not good enough for a Carter. Tom grabbed a handful of rice cakes. My brother went to law school and married some cold fish from the social register, even turned down New York law firms to work for Dad. Now I'm supposed to do the same thing. Cut my hair and conform, whatever. Forget what I want. He didn't just mean Leanna. I was sure of that. Only I knew that Tom secretly dreamed of becoming an artist, something else he'd never shared with his parents. His father dreamed of a law firm called Carter, Carter, and Carter. Tom never told him otherwise. I said, you're not being fair, meaning the art, more than Leanna. You should give them a chance. You don't know what they're like. They're not your parents. No, they weren't, unfortunately. I shrugged, guessing I didn't know much about family relations. Leaving Tom in the kitchen, I pushed through the dining room door. The Carters waited, packages of baby pictures spread before them. Mrs. Carter waved me over, pointing at a photo. Isn't he an angel? She said, look at this one with the bunny ears. I nodded, but I was back to imagining Caitlin's kisses. Okay, wonderful. That'll end the chapter. Again, we're reading Breathing Underwater by Alex Flynn. Thanks for listening.